Namaste. Welcome to this session. We have been dealing with Vashikara Vairagya in particular and Vairagya in general. Today, I want you to relate some general wisdom which has come from time immemorial. Generation after generation have been telling us about Vairagya. The wiser people of all various generations have given enormous insight into Vairagya. So today we are going to have some general idea about Vairagya. In the last session, we were considering with an example of mango how the wisdom process is evolved from very peripheral layer of the mango, which is a visual object and an olfactory object, aroma of mango and bewitching color of mango, shape of mango, color of mango, form of mango. And then we were proceeding to various layers. Ultimately, we came to the eighth layer of it, where there is the metaphysical principle, Sarvantariyami. Mango is also a life form, if you recall. It's a botanical life form in the form of mango tree, and mango fruit comes on mango tree, which is a life species. And then there is Antaryami, there is Atma Tattva, there is Purusha Tattva, there is Antaryami Tattva, Bhagavad Tattva. So Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, Vasudevam Idam Sarvam, Vishnumayam Idam Jagata, Ishavasyam Idam Sarvam. So these are the scriptural statements which tell us about the immanent and transcendent metaphysical principle even in an object like mango, which is bewitching object. So that's how the rishis were in Ishavasya Vritti, or Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma Vritti. The principle of Brahma, the Brahma is immanent in all particles in this universe. Then why not objects? So also all objects of universe. So while we were dealing with that example of mango, let me tell you, even in the ancient wisdom, where it was trying to ascertain the value of Vairagya and transmit the value of Vairagya from generation to generation to generation to generation, I recall one of the piece of instructions which came in like this. With the example of mango, we know mango is bewitching fruit. It has that enticing aroma. Then when you go to the inner layer of it, when you eat the substance of mango, it is really heavenly fruit. No doubt about it. Celestial fruit. But if you have an inquiry into that mango, mango comes from mango tree. The mango tree is grown on a field. And then when the tree is to be grown, we have to put manure to mango tree. Now, organic manure. What is inorganic manure? Which is nourishing the tree of mango, nurturing the tree of mango and giving you beautiful fruit. It is because of the manures. Now, what is in the manure? Organic manure. It is waste. It is waste of all organic creatures, our waste, human fecal matter to fecal matter of animals, rotten organic food. So all these things make a manure. You all have heard about urea as a fertilizer. What is urea? What is word urea? What is it actually? How it is constituted of? What is constituting urea, which is put mixed with the soil of where the mango tree is grown, and then you get beautiful mango. So there are so many ways to look at it. Our waste is turning out that bewitching mango. That mango is again consumed by us. Having consumed by us, it again gets into our system, and again it turns out waste, obnoxious waste. That obnoxious waste goes to the tree in the form of fertilizers, manures, and again you get bewitching fruit. So see the cycle of something very obnoxious to very bewitching. Obnoxious becoming bewitching, bewitching becoming obnoxious, obnoxious becoming bewitching, bewitching becoming obnoxious. Look at this cycle. So this will definitely constitute in wisdom formation. So we ended last session with an example of mango, and I wanted you to further convey something about the same mango which I did just now. Now, Vairagya, understand this very word Vairagya. Vairagya, Viraga, Raga, Rajo Ragatmakaha, Rajo Guna will become Raga. Then Raga is that one which gives us the what is counterposition to Vairagya. And therefore, the word very Vairagya is Viraga. Viraga means Vigata Raga. Vigata Raga means Vigata Rajoguna. So try to understand Gunatmakata, the Guna aspect behind what is countered by Vairagya. Now this Vairagya is with respect to Vishayas. That is why, if you recall the sutra that we considered, Drushtanushravika Vishaya Vitrushnasya Vashikara Sagnya Vairagyam. Vishaya Vitrushna. Vishaya Vitrushna. Vishaya. What is Vishaya? Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha Adi Vishayas. So these are the objects of senses. So Vairagya is for objects of senses. And therefore it is construed that it has to be given up, given up, given up, given up. 5 kinds of giving up. And then also mental objects. Because the same objects all are also objects of mind. And we think, therefore, Vairagya is to renounce, to give up, and give up, and give up, and keep on giving up. But unless you take support to something, you can't give up which is support for us. We'll have to take a new support to give up the present support. What is the present support to our mind and senses? The present support to our mind and senses is Vishayas. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandhadi Vishayas, Manasika Vishayas. So these objects are supports. Now, if you want to give up, that means you have to do away with the support. Now, if you have to do away with the support, you must take another support. So, Vishaya Vitrushna is overcome by not just starving, not just starvation and just becoming supportless. We have to take new support. So, the Vitrushna is process where Trushna is countered by another Trushna. We have to have thirst. The thirst is replaced by thirst. So lower thirst is replaced by higher thirst. Last time I told you about the precept of Bhagavad Gita. Param drushtva nivartante. Param drushtva. So thirst for higher will help you overcome thirst for lower. Now Vishaya Trushna, the thirst for the objects of senses and mind, is a lower thirst. And therefore, we need to overcome the lower thirst by having higher thirst. So it is not thirstlessness as a measure against Trushna. It is not thirstlessness that is measured against the thirst. It is a new thirst. It is higher thirst. It is superior thirst. It is nobler thirst. It is sublime thirst. So the Vishaya Trushna, Vaishayika Trushna, is to be replaced by Tattva Trushna. We must have Trushna for thirst, Trushna for Tattva. Higher principles, superior principles. Atma Tattva, Bhagavad Tattva, Sat Tattva. So when we take recourse to Sat Tattva, the Trushna for lower will go away. When we take support of Atma Tattva, the thirst for lower will go away. When we take support of Bhagavad Tattva, the thirst for lower will go away. So Vairagya is nowhere suggesting thirstlessness, as is the popular notion. Yoga and Adhyatma is suggesting taking recourse to higher thirst, superior thirst, nobler thirst, sublime thirst. So we have to go for another thirst, a new thirst. So new thirst will replace the old thirst. New thirst will help us overcome existing thirst. Now where is the existing thirst? Existing thirst is for sensory objects. Existing thirst is for the mental objects. So Vishaya Trushna will go away by Tattva Trushna. Therefore in Adhyatma we are advised to improve the thirst, increase the thirst for something which will develop Vigata Trushna for objects, which will help us overcome the thirst for objects, sensory objects, mental objects, psychic objects. That is what the principle of Param Drushtva Nivartante of Bhagavad Gita is mentioning. That's a fabulous instruction which ultimately has come from divinity. So, nowhere thirstlessness is being suggested in Vairagya. If you are thirstless, that means almost your springs of life are gone. That's why I told you about the word dispassion. If you are doing something with no passion, understand the grade of that work, quality of the work, grade of the work. So nowhere it is suggested. Are you suggested do your yoga without passion? You should have passion. But this is a higher passion. This is trans-mundane passion. Let's have a trans-mundane passion so that mundane passion will go away by itself, on its own. We don't have to drive it. We don't have to kick it. We don't have to stampede it. We don't have to bulldoze it. So Adhyatma is suggesting a positive measure in Vairagya rather than negative measure in Vairagya. So that is a thing that we need to understand. So as I said, generation after generations, they have been telling us about Vairagya. What we will be told today about Vairagya and as a measure of Vairagya will be one thing. But 100 years back, 200 years back, 500 years back, 1000 years back, 5000 years back, 10,000 years back, 50,000 years back, 500,000 years back, what was being told was different. And now we have the resources to understand what has been the advice for Vairagya, for inculcation of Vairagya from time immemorial. We just can't depend upon today's advices. Today's advice might be coming handy for practical purposes. But for us to inculcate the value, we must hear about what was told to our previous generations. Generations of previous eons. That's why I told you about today that we will be considering how this has come. The wisdom has been transmitted in different situations, different scenarios, different time and space framework, different eons. So one of the that will tell us what really Vairagya is. We'll have to go retrospectively back to various advices which came during different times to different caliber of people. For practical purpose, we want Vairagya advice for our caliber. Okay, that's perfectly right. But to inculcate the value, we must have the inputs about how Vairagya was instructed to different hierarchies, in different social structures, in different social time frames. So one of the, that will help us understand what really Vairagya is. And it will broaden our understanding of Vairagya. Vairagya is multifaceted. What will I tell you about Vairagya? Considering your social conditions around, today's social conditions. But then for broader understanding of it, we must retrospectively look at the Vairagya instructions which have come from time immemorial. Anyway, one of the types of Vairagya that was suggested in different time, space, scenarios, situations, frameworks. It was called Ichha Vyapakatva. Ichha Vyapakatva. See, otherwise we think Vairagya is to kill Ichha. Ichha means desire. Ichha means desire. What is our idea of Vairagya is to strangulate desires. Catch hold of the throat of desires and strangulate it. No, that is outclassical. So, the wiser people told us about Ichha Vyapakatva. It is not saying that give up desires, stampede desires, strangulate desires, or give slow poisoning to desire, or kill desires. No. Killing desires is not the way of Vairagya in classical sense of the term. It is Ichha Vyapakatva. Vyapakatva means to broaden. Desire broadening. Let us broaden the desires to counter the desires. Because in Vairagya, we are trying to counter our desires, which is beyond doubt. We are trying to counter the Vaisheshika desires. So Vaisheshika desires of objects in the form of Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha are very narrow. So these are narrow desires, these are petty desires. Petty desires should be countered by not stampeding them, vanquishing them, strangulating them, killing them, but by broadening the desire. Because desire is human tendency. Your desire is tendency of any living being. Can you come across living thing having no desire of whatsoever? Impossible. And then for human beings, we are bubbling with desires. So we can't say have no desire or become desireless. Desirelessness is not Vairagya, but to expand the Vairagya. So it is to be understood that the subconscious tendency is subsumed by desires, and therefore there is no way to really vanquish desire. Let us try to make our desires broader and broader and broader. It doesn't mean that the petty desires are included. The petty desires go away. That's the magic. When you broaden the desire, Ichha Vyapakatva. Vyapakatva means making it more and more pervasive. When you make more and more pervasive, the physics tells us that the smaller ones are included. In a diameter of 10 inches, diameter of 2 inches and 3 inches and 4 inches and 5 inches are included. But here that is not the case. When you expand the radius of your desire, the petty desires go away. Not that they are included. So, Ichha Vyapakatva and not Ichha Vighatatva. It is not to inflict Ichha with Vighata, destructive measure, but expansive measure, broadening the desire, so that we are going with our tendencies, which is desirefulness. Human mind means desirefulness, and therefore that is how Vairagya is advised by ancient wisdom. Another perspective here is that Ichha Vyapakatva. That means we have to open out the space. See, usually what happens is, if you look at your psychosis of desires or the psychodynamics of desires, when you are in confinement, the desires will be having pressure cooker condition. When you are isolated, when you are all alone, when you are in an isolation, the desires pop up onto the surface of your mind and they then play havoc. So whenever you feel that the desire is boiling up and is tending to come to surface and explode to come out, the advice is come out of seclusion, come out of isolation, come out in society rather than in a small circumference of your isolation. Open out the circumference, come out in social. When you come out in social, you will have some sense of shame. The decency will come up, and the decency will counter the boiling vasana, boiling tendency. So, open out the radius of your isolation and come into a larger radius of socialization. Come in people. So the petty desires which were bubbling in isolation would be set aside. The sin surfaces while you are in isolation. But the moment you come out in society, in a social radius, social radius, then the decency is in requisition. When the decency is in requisition, that will set aside this petty havoc of vasanas. The papa vasana will be mitigated, will be turned down to a great extent. And therefore, ekanta should be given up. Ekanta should be given up. Ekanta means isolation. So that sense of shame will come up. Abashment will surface. Sense of shame will surface. And the sense of shame will turn down the passion flame. So what is called as lajja, loka lajja. Because we will be decent when we have 10 people around. Let me tell you at this juncture that we had earlier joint family system. And the joint family system really kept people quite decent in their own houses. Now today, with the family system that you have, nuclear family system that you have, your house is your house. There is no one apart from you in your house. And therefore, the indecency is rampant. Indecency is rampant in our houses today, where we are having nuclear family system. But in earlier times, we had joint family system. Sometimes 2-3 generations stayed together. So elder people had to exercise restraint because there were children around in the house. Elder people had to exercise restraint quite naturally. It is not by coercion, by force. Naturally, they were decent. Why? Because for older people, younger people were at home, children were at home, babies were at home, and the larger family circumference was also in the house. Therefore, decency was quite there. For a younger people, there was sense of shame because elder people were around. For younger people, elder people were around and therefore they were restrained. They had lajja. They had sense of shame, sense of abashment. So elderly people also had sense of abashment. The young people also had sense of abashment. And the teenagers also had to have the sense of abashment. It is because of the joint family system, people of different generations, where there sometimes 3 generations stayed together. Sometimes even 4 generations stayed together. So therefore, the joint family system really kept us cultured. Not by force. See, when you are decent while you are in a social, it's not by force that you are decent. You are naturally decent. Not that you force yourself to be decent. You are motivated to be decent. Similarly, in joint family system, there was this aspect of Ichcha Vyapakatva. If you wanted to eat some pudding and delicacies, you knew that there are 10, 20, 15, 20 people in the house. So naturally, your desire to eat, relish the delicacies expanded rather than in the nuclear family system. Perhaps it is 2 or 3. Today it is maximum 3, they say. Or perhaps you are all alone and then you have no reservations. You are all alone, you have no reservations. So this seclusion should be broken away. Then Ichha Vyapakatva will take place. When the Ichha Vyapakatva will take place, we will become decent. So understand this principle of Ichha Vyapakatva, and therein joint family system which we had for generations and generations together. Tens of generations were in joint family system. So for long time, our decencies passed from generation to generation to generation. Now we have discouraged that. We have cut the cord of decency because of this nuclear family system. We won't be frolicsome. Imagine joint family system, our parents, our grandparents, our uncles, our granduncles, our aunties, our grandaunties in the house. We won't be frolicsome. Even if you are a teenager, you won't be frolicsome. Even if you are a young person, you won't be frolicsome by being in the house. So understand the whole perspective of Ichha Vyapakatva. Then Ekechhavada. It doesn't say Nirichha, it says Ekecha. Ichha. Have one Ichha, one strong Ichha, one powerful Ichha. One Ichha of high magnitude. Ichha means desire. So this also works for reformation, this also works for decency, and the best example I perhaps cited during the last session, when these teenagers, youngsters, it's an age where one is naturally frolicsome, one is naturally sensual. That's the age that we will be sensual in that age. But when we have examination fever, what happens? Even the children of the age of 15, 16, 17, 20, 24, 25 are more restrained. Why? Because one strong desire created by examination fever, that I must come out with flying colors. I must study. So 2, 3, 4 months, when it is particularly a public examination, the student can seriously study for 3, 4 months. Very, very seriously. It is not a coercion. It is not a force. It is quite spontaneously. It is on their own accord. They decide to study for examination and become restrained, become moderate, become temperate. So we must have such kind of Ichha which makes us serious. One kind of desire which will make us serious. If we become serious, we will not be indecent, we will not be frolicsome, we will not be libertine. So strong one, higher desire. So desirelessness is countered by higher desire, which I have been telling you repeatedly. That is called Ekechhavada. Ekechhavada makes us gambhir. We become serious. We become thoughtful. We become sanyami, that is restrained. We become sthiramati, that is steady in mind. we become steady in mind. It is unsteady mind which provocates the passion. So, Sthiramati, steady intelligence, steady mind, definitely contributes to. How do we become steady? We become steady in mind because of serious desire, strong desire, such as passing the examination in flying colors. So that is Ichha Vyapakatva, Ekecha Vada. Now we come to Ichha Tanukaranam. Ichha Tanukaranam. This is opposite. Tanu means to taper. Ichha, desire tapering. What is this Ichha tapering? See, here comes the mathematics of desires, which I told you during Vyatireka Sanya Vairagya. We need to have a survey of our desires. And we have to classify our desires. What is this classification of desires? Listen carefully. See, we have some objects which are loved objects, our beloved objects, and it is here that desire bubbles up. The objects which you don't like, the desires doesn't bubble up there. Where do we get the desire bubbling, desire growing, desire coming, desire playing havoc? It is with regards to Priya objects. Priya means loving. We first love the objects, and this love for objects creates love for desire, and then it triggers the desire. So in this process of Ichha Tanukaranam, desire attenuation, there is classification of objects. So, what is this classification? The classification is as follows. Nimnatama Priya objects. Nimnatara Priya objects. Nimna Priya objects. Then Priya objects. Priyatara objects. Priyatama objects. These are the gradations. What is it? What are these gradations here? Most loved objects. Superlative. Superlatively loved objects. Now you can understand how much is the desire here. So superlatively loved objects, comparatively loved objects, positively loved objects. So you know about these degrees: positive degree, comparative degree, superlative degree. Now you know that it is difficult to exercise control on superlatively loved objects as compared to just positively loved objects, because that's the first degree. I love this object. I very much love this object. Oh, I love this object very much. That very much loved object is difficult to control. Nothing to do there. No step should be taken there. Do you follow? So this is the gradation. Superlatively loved objects, highest desire. Comparatively loved objects, relatively less desire. Positively loved objects, further less desire. Okay. Then, on the other hand, least loved objects. This is not hated object. Least loved objects. lesserly loved objects and less loved objects. So our loved objects are of these 6 grades. 3 in little negative zone and 3 in positive zone. The hated objects, we don't have desires. So there is no need to have any strategy for desire management where it is hated objects. We have no desire for hated objects. We'll be having hated objects, more hated objects, most hated objects. The Vairagya process need not be coming in there because they are hated objects. Where Vairagya process has to come in is here. So least loved, lesserly loved, less loved, loved, more loved, and most loved. So the management has to come here. So in Ichha Tanukaranam or Ichha attenuation or desire attenuation, first measure should be taken on least loved objects. It is easy to reform there. Although they are least loved, still because of habituation, we entertain them. We entertain their consumption. So first of all, we have to identify if something is least loved, then we can take measures to do away with it sooner or later. Because of habituation, it might be a little difficult. But then you can have self-counseling that it is out of habituation that I am consuming these objects which are least loved. Why not take measure against? So the curtailment or the sanction process will come from this end. Least loved objects, you have to first try to clip them off. That too again gradually. Because you have to get used, because the body is used to consuming those objects. Although you don't love them so much, they are least loved, but still the body has developed habituation, and therefore we do not give that up. So we'll have to take some measures in first clipping that. So from that, then come to lesserly loved objects. Then come to less loved objects. Then come to just loved objects. Like I love it. I love it. I love it. From lower end, you have to start management. Because Vairagya has to, somewhere has to have restraint, somewhere has to have some kind of conditioning, some kind of sanction, some kind of resoluteness. It's not that there is no resoluteness needed. I am not suggesting, the classical Vairagya is not suggesting that there is no need of resoluteness. There has to be resoluteness. If you are empowered to have resoluteness, you have to have resoluteness, determination. But that it should come from that end. So that is called Ichha Tanukaranam, where we have to classify. So more rationally tackling this problem of avairagya. Because as I said, we are habituated to some of the habits. It's not inborn attachment that we have. How many of us were having inborn kind of craze for tea and coffee? It came later by some social influence. Then we can really rationally think over it that this is not my tendency of the flesh, taking a cup of tea and cup of coffee. I have developed it. If I have developed the habit, I should first take measures there. But if something is tendency of the very flesh and from subconscious, it is not proper to take any measure there. can backfire very severely and seriously. So, this is also a piece of instruction which has come called Ichha Tanukaranam. And we should not take recourse to Ichha Vighatavada. However, sometimes we have to take this measure. It is emergency measure. Sometimes there are emergency needs. We know, we can understand what we do in emergency. Unusual measure is taken in emergency. Sometimes, very sometimes, only during emergency there is Ichha Vighatavada. This should be taken recourse to, but very scarcely, very rarely. Only when there is really emergency. So, these are the types of vairagya, which is Ichha Tanukaranam, Ichha Vighatavad, Ichha Ekechavad, and Ichha Vyapakatva. So, Ichha Vyapakatva number 1, Ekechavad number 2, Ichha Tanukaranam number 3, Ichha Udattikaranam. What is this? Ichha Udattikaranam is to have magnanimous desires. In Karma Yoga, this principle comes very handy. Whatever one does for Bhagavad Ichha, Bhagavad Prityartha, Bhagavad Kainkarya Rupa. So, whatever you are doing, try to do it with remembering your personal deity. The Vairagya Vritti will certainly come in, which is being cherished, which we are cherishing, which is relished, and which we are looking for. I just will give you one example here to understand this Ichha Udattikaranam, how effectively it can work. This is a real story that has come in, you will come across this in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was a saintly man of almost our era. And he had so many kinds of students, so many disciples around him of various caliber, various consciousness caliber, because he was really a saintly person and people gathered around him. Apart from someone like a cream, like Narendra, who later became Vivekananda, there were also ordinary people who were his disciples and who were in his Sangha, who were in company of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, because he would not reject anyone. He was really a saintly person. One of his disciples had a bad habit. He was in habit of taking drinks and he could never resist. And once he came to Ramakrishna and fell at his feet and beseeched, "Oh Swamiji, please help me get rid of this habit. I really want to get rid of habit, but I really can't get rid of this habit. I honestly feel that I should be out of it. I should do away with it, but I really cannot do that. What can I do?" Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says, "Okay, no problem. You can continue consuming it. But you do one thing. You pick up your glass, you pour your drinks into it, lift the glass to your eye level, and then say, 'Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, I offer this to you,' and then I consume." This fellow tried to do that on the following day. He filled up the glass, lifted it up to his eyes, and he says, Ramakrishna Paramahams, I offer this to you. And he started citing figure of Ramakrishna in the glass. But therefore he could not consume it. And he overcame the habit. He did second time, third time, but later he did not have to do that. The moment he thought of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa before taking sip of it, so that was what I advised. Remember me and then take your sip. Ramakrishna, this is my offering to you, say, and then you take it. He could not do that. He could not offer that drink for which he also had some kind of dislike, because he wanted to reform. So he did not say, stop drinking. He said, offer it to me and drink it. He could not. And that's how he overcame that bad habit, which he could not do for years and years and years. Another example I will give you. One of very senior students of Guruji, he came and told me, Prashantji, I feel very ashamed. Guruji is such a great man and we attend his classes, we do the classes. But I'm not still motivated to be practicing yoga regularly. Although I understand it's a very noble subject, but still we don't practice. And we undeserving students are around him. Then I told him that, well, that is no shortcoming on your part. It is actually, it speaks about thing that Guruji is disqualified and therefore we are not getting influenced to practice. He said, this is slap on my face. And from next day onwards, he started his practice. Either you say that Guruji is not up to the standard, therefore he is not able to influence me to practice. Rather than saying that I am not qualified to practice, I am not culturally sound enough, you try to put blame on Guruji. And he could not do that. And he said, from next day onwards, I honestly started practicing. So this is a kind of Ichha Udattikarana. I did not say you must practice. Why are you putting Guruji to shame? It's a discredit to Guruji that you don't practice. So I told him maybe that the Guruji doesn't really deserve to be teaching, and therefore maybe you are like almost a stone, not at all influenced. He could not take this. He said, no, I revere Guruji. And from next day he started practicing. So that's the Ichha Vighatavada. Then, I think finally for today's session, let me tell you that why these desires are playing havoc, why these desires are hovering in our minds. It is basically because of mamatva and ahamtva. We are trying to give proteins and we are trying to give nutrition to our mindness, I-ness. If you don't have I-ness and mindness, where will be the desire? Desire will be paralyzed. It is because of ahamtva and mamatva, I-ness and mindness, that the desires are getting nurtured, nourished, they are getting the tonics, they are getting the nourishment. So something needs to be done with ahamtva and mamatva, I-ness and my-ness. If I-ness and my-ness is cultured, evolved, naturally desires will slowly flee from the sight of the mind. So something needs to be done with our ahankara, my-ness and I-ness, ahamtva and mamatva. So let's do something for our ahamtva, mamatva, which has been kept in mutiny. It is mutilated and it's in mutiny. Let's give a transmuting touch to our ahamtva. The desire will flee from sights. So it becomes a desire repellent by reforming our I-ness and my-ness. Like there is mosquito repellent, there can be something called desire repellent. That is by ennobling our subjective entity, ennobling our ahamtva and mamatva. That is also one of the ways. But anyway, the mohajal of desires is so strong that it cannot be easily gotten rid of it. Therefore, I will give you about last piece of instruction which comes from Dharma Shastra. It says, howsoever you might try to drive away desires, reform any desires, get free from desires, freedom from desires, yet it will not happen. Therefore, our Dharma Shastra gives us a measure called prayaschitta, atonement, expiation. See that whenever you realize that you were victim of passion, you were victim of desires, take a prayaschitta, atonement, expiation. So this constant prayaschitta karma will slowly reform you. So these are the tricks which the ancient wisdom has given. So we took account of some of these measures which have come from time immemorial. So with that, we will be ending the session today. So namaskar all of you.